everyone. Welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. Did you miss us? I missed us. I hope Jesse missed us.
I missed us definitely.
All right. So I'm Charles Skaggs, back in the basement of solitude because, hey, we've been dealing with everyone's around the world has been dealing with the coronavirus. And I'm joined once again by my fellow host and wonderful person, and someone who makes me smile every time I talk to him, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
Well, Charles, you make me smile as well. It is so good to be back. Um, I, I picture since Charles does so much of the heavy lifting on our episodes, I always picture that he has a poster board, small poster board on his monitor that says "Next Stop Everywhere," Fandom Zone, Titan Talk. Uh, you know,
Ghostwood.
Ghostwood.
Yeah.
That because I think we've been doing this multiple podcasts for multiple years,
Right.
and I think it's once you were like, oh wait a minute, I'm talking to Jesse. No, this isn't Next Stop Everywhere. It's
Well, that's
something
it.
else.
This is why I have my notes because I can focus my brain on which show I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But like I said, we know it's been a while. We haven't figured out really a show that we wanted to discuss. Obviously a lot of shows have been off the air, and but Jesse came up with an idea, and I'm going to let him explain this idea, what we're going to do today on today's show, as we try to remind everybody that hey, we still exist.
Yeah, so Charles and I, and hopefully you guys are listening to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast.
Please do.
Charles and I are continuing to cover a lot of great material that has happened during this hiatus. But we have debated what we're going to do. I know that I'm really interested in Stargirl coming up, so we may have to find time for that.
Right.
He both and I both have enjoyed Picard, but we're like, does that really fit our format? And I just said, there's a lot of people at home.
Well, we could
Looking.
start a Star Trek podcast that a lot of people have been wanting us to do.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Let's put a pin on that. So there are people that are going out and you're looking for new content. Okay. There is not as many new shows on right now. There is the film and television industry are kind of in shutdown the same way we are. And so during this time, should have a little extra TV watching time where you can go back and catch up on things you possibly may have missed or revisit things that you have not watched in a long time. And I brought that up to Charles, and Charles said, yeah, that sounds like a great talk.
Right.
So we kind of came from this two different angles. So Charles has had groups, and I'm going to let him explain that. And then I have, from those different groups, I have 5 specific series that I want to talk about. I know Charles has at least 4 or 5 that he wants to recommend.
Or 20 or 30.
Okay. So we're going to start out with, so what this is with our theme, because there are certainly TV shows that weren't based on comic books that I would recommend you binging.
Right.
Like if you've never watched Twin Peaks, why not?
Yeah.
If you haven't watched Justified,
I have a podcast for that.
Yes.
So
yes.
Obviously fitting with our format because we review comic book TV shows here on the Phantom Zone. So yeah, Jesse thought, hey, let's talk about shows that people can binge watch as they're hiding out from the coronavirus.
Yes.
Maybe you've already done some of those and you're looking for other ideas. So we kind of wanted to kind of give our suggestions, our recommendations about which shows everybody can watch. And so what we're going to do, at least the way I've got this set up, is that I'd like to break this down into shows that are essentially long runs, like if you're really looking to invest a lot of time into something. So that would be shows that I classify as 5 seasons or more. Or, shows that, like maybe had a good 5 season run that was really good and highly recommended, and then kind of go to a medium category where there's like maybe a few seasons, say 3 or 4, if you're not looking to invest as much time. And then if you're just kind of looking for something short to kind of tide you over, we have a short run category that's 2 seasons or less. So 1 or 2 seasons.
Good.
Just something like if you're looking to kind of just like a quick burn to through something to tide you over until a new show arrives. We've got that as
Okay.
well. So does that sound good?
So
That sound okay
I
with
think
you?
that sounds really good. Are we going to go long to
Yes.
short or
Let's.
short to long?
I think let's start long to short.
I agree.
Okay. All right. So let's start right off the bat as we try to give our recommendations of what you can binge watch. And long runs, 5 seasons or more. Let's start with you, Jesse. So if there's a show that's 5 seasons or more, what would you recommend? Do you have any of those shows in your recommendation list?
I do. iZombie,
Yeah, that
which
was
is
one of that was
currently
that
streaming
was
on
that was
Netflix.
one of mine. Yeah.
It's loosely based on the comic by Chris Robertson and artist
Michael.
Michael Allred,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, It
And
was a Vertigo comic series. Yeah.
yeah, um, it and I think some people may have skipped it because they're like, okay, I've already got a zombie show, right? I've got,
Walking
you
Dead.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, Walking Dead, something. This is a show that should not work because it is a pure procedural.
Right.
The premise is that Liv becomes a zombie accidentally.
Right.
She eats a brain and she takes on the personality and the memories of the brain she eats. And she solves a crime.
So
Pretty,
it's kind of a procedural,
yeah,
but
but
it's also very, very funny.
it's very funny. Um,
And Rose McIver
you know,
is brilliant because she's such a talented actress. She can take on the personalities of the brains that she eats, and that's kind of the premise that every week she eats a different brain, and they have a different personality trait, and she's able to do that, and she's amazing.
it it is amazing watching her do that. One of the little treats that they do, and I specifically pick treats, is she just doesn't take the brain matter and eats it. She cooks it a different way every episode. It may be,
In a very culinary recipe style.
yes, like she may make quiche, she may make smoothies, she may take sushi, she burgers. I mean, and they do it through very quick cutting,
Right.
and but you show her cooking that each time.
Right. Omelets
And
or,
yeah,
French
it
toast, you name it. You name it.
yeah. Also, great cast. Rose McIver, as you said, she was Tinkerbell on Once Upon a Time, but David Anders
Yes.
from Heroes, Once Upon a Time, Alias,
Alias, yeah.
is brilliant
Yeah, he plays
as
Blaine McDonough. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, he's basically the recurring villain. But he's got some history with Liv, like he ends up killing one of her lovers at one point. I won't say which one because I don't want to spoil that.
right.
But so there's some antagonism there, and basically he's one of those characters that kind of like Spike tends to stir the pot on
Yeah,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
yeah. Malcolm Goodwin plays Clive Babineau, who is the police detective. He doesn't know why Liv. He thinks she's psychic or something. She helps him study, help solves the crimes. We turns out he is a closeted uh, Dragons Dungeons and Dragons player.
Game of Thrones geek.
Yeah, Game of Thrones geek.
I,
Uh,
I just rewatched the episode where Ravi, played by Ro Coley,
yeah,
um, finds out that Clive is a Secret Game of Thrones fan and has a lot of fun taunting him about that.
Yeah, and that Ravi is a wonderful character. He is at the beginning the only person that knows Liv is a zombie. Robert Buckley plays her ex fiance, Major Lillywhite. He has an interesting character arc. If you were going, I don't need another zombie show. Walking Dead hits that mark in my watching. This is far away from The Walking Dead as you can. It is funny. It's actually in places hopeful,
Right.
and I just and
It,
a great premise that they executed wonderful.
yeah, I think so too. It's a very charming show. The Walking Dead, obviously is your more serious drama. Excuse me. And but iZombie, yeah, it's lighter, but I mean it does have some dramatic moments.
It does.
But it's a very unpredictable show. And just it's such a great ensemble cast.
Yes, well said. And I think charming is the perfect word. This
Yes.
is a charming show that you will love. And I think people who are not as big a fan of genre shows would like this one because of the procedural part of it, the built-in comedy of Liv taking on all these different personalities. Good stuff.
Yeah. So the show ran 5 seasons. So obviously that fits into this category. And as far as I can, as a fan, as someone who watched all 5 seasons, I can recommend that you don't have to skip any seasons.
No,
They're
don't.
all each season is great.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Highly recommended.
So, how about you, Charles? Do you have a long-running one to recommend?
Yeah, I went to kind of get off the zombie theme for just a bit because
Hmm.
I do have that other zombie show to recommend. But I would recommend Smallville, the first 5 seasons of Smallville, to
Okay.
be specific, excuse me. Um, this is obviously based on The Legend of Superman by DC Comics. So I'm sure I don't need to go a lot into that detail because I'm sure a lot of people, especially those that listen to this show, know Superman. I'm sure
Right.
they know Smallville. Um, this came out in 2001. It debuted shortly, like the month after the September 11th disaster. And it was such a ray of sunshine after that, in that dark, dark period that we were in back then, almost 20 years ago now. And um, basically, it's the premise is, it's the high school years of Clark Kent, the young man who grows up to become Superman, and it's his journey into becoming that hero that we know as Superman. Set in Smallville, Kansas, his hometown, growing up, played by Tom Welling, and featuring Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor, who they kind of go back to a more pre-crisis time where um, Lex and Clark grew up in Smallville together. So there's that relationship there. They have that friendship that obviously turns antagonistic over time. And this is obviously before Lois Lane, so to have a love interest, we have Kristen Kriuk as Lana Lang. And if you watch just the pilot episode alone, actually the first hour pilot, and then the second episode, because when this first aired, they aired both back to back as a 2 hour pilot. Um, it's such a great opening. It draws you right in from the get go. You're quickly invested in the Clark and Lana romance, and the dynamic is just fantastic. You've got other great actors. You've got John Glover as Lionel Luthor, Lex's father, who, because he's so cruel, you kind of come to understand why Luthor turned out the way he did. You have John Schneider and then O'Toole as Jonathan and Martha Kent, who, in my opinion, are the best depiction of Ma and Pa Kent ever on
I
television.
agree. I totally agree.
Um, John Snyder is fantastic. Sometimes he's very frustrating as he gets a little, he's very overprotective of Clark. Is afraid that people are going to find out about his powers, but his character is handled so much better than, say, Kevin Costner's Jonathan Kent in Man of Steel, to cite another example, and Annette O'Toole, who Superman fans may remember from playing Lana Lang in Superman 3, returns to Superman here, but this time as Clark's mother, Martha Kent, and she's just fabulous. She's exactly, they're exactly the parents that you would want, would expect, who raised Clark from this wholesome background, um, and make him the true inspirational man that he grows up to be. They're the foundation of that. And
A-
it's just such a great show. And I'm sure Jesse would agree with me.
yeah, absolutely.
But this is the show that, if you're a fan of the modern CW shows, superhero shows, your Arrowverse shows, this is kind of the show that inspired that, and which is one of the reasons why, during the recent Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, they went back and asked Tom Welling and Erica Durance to reprise their characters from Smallville as part of that, because they wanted to acknowledge that. And I just, I just, if you're a fan of those, like I said, those CW shows, you should definitely recommend. I definitely recommend checking this out. You can find the episodes currently on Hulu. Um, I kind of surprised, because you think this would be perfect for DC Universe streaming service,
You would
but
think so, but I guess rights wise.
rights wise, I think right now Hulu owns the rights, so probably
Okay.
until Hulu that expires, at least
Hmm.
for right now, you can check out Smallville on Hulu.
Good, good.
Uh,
All right.
all right. So, do you have any other shows that are 5 seasons or more?
Uh, I'm certainly there are. Why don't you give us a couple more, and then we'll move on to our next group.
Well, I just have one more.
Okay.
Obviously, getting back to the zombie theme, I'm definitely going to recommend The Walking Dead.
Okay.
Specifically, the first 8 seasons and the first 5 episodes of season 9, because that's when, in that fifth episode of season 9, that's when Andrew Lincoln left as Rick Grimes.
Okay.
Um, as a fan, like I wasn't, like a lot of people, I wasn't a fan of the Walking Dead comic book until the TV show came out, and then after being inspired enough, I went back and read the Walking Dead comic by Robert Kirkman, uh, from Image Comics, that this is based on. And what the Walking Dead is essentially, a it's set up as a never-ending zombie story, that essentially there was a zombie apocalypse. Um, a, a lot of people, they're fighting to survive against, the zombie outbreak, and but you get, because of the the serial aspect of the TV show, you really get invested in the characters much more than you would in a regular zombie movie. They have so much depth and heart, and again, this is another great ensemble cast. You have Andrew Lincoln as Rick Grimes, other actors throughout the seasons. Denai Guerrera as Michonne, who obviously plays Okoye later in Black Panther. Norman Reedus as Daryl Dixon, who was the show's first breakout character. Um, Lauren Cohen as Maggie Green. This is where, and you had a couple of great villains throughout the years. You had David Morrissey as the governor. You had Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan, and and you become, because you become really invested in these characters as they struggle to survive, and it's not so much focused on the zombies. The zombies become incidental. It's really the characters, and that struggle against other groups that are out there, um, some nice, some not so nice, and as a result, it's that human conflict. And so, it's again, it may not be your cup of tea, but it's really great drama, and
Yeah.
and I highly recommend it.
Yeah. One of the things that I am not normally a fan of horror.
Right.
Um, even down to I didn't even watch Swamp
Thing.
Thing
Yeah.
on DC Universe. But I don't remember what drove me to Charles, but something or another. I guess maybe it was the press release or all the hype. But I turned into Walking Dead, and it was so well done.
Right.
It is.
Great production values, great directing.
Yes, and I have stuck with it. I do agree that sometimes it's a little dark, and you're like, "Come on, can we win anything?" But I've stuck with it, and I agree with you. I think if you wanted to just do a short, and not short, but a limited binge of from the setup to Rick's um,
Departure.
departure.
Yeah.
Yes, I keep it
Yeah.
spoiler
We don't. Yeah,
free.
we don't want to
Yeah.
spoil.
It's a really good. If you look at it as his journey, that's really really nice.
Exactly. And I think,
Yeah.
and then that's Rick is essentially the heart of the show,
Yes.
and so it's everything kind of centers around him. You see him becoming the leader of the group, and
Yes.
with all that entails the struggle
Yes.
to get everybody, keep everybody alive, and the
Yeah.
responsibility and the weight that brings down on him.
Yeah.
Um, it's just really gripping television, and
I agree.
highly recommended.
Good.
All right,
All right.
all right. So let's move to our few season run category.
Okay.
So Jesse, do you have any in that 3 to 4 season range?
Did Agent Carter make a third season, or was it
No,
just two?
just two.
So I did not get a middle range. Help
Okay.
me out,
All
Charles.
right, all
Give me
right,
a couple.
all right. I got a few right off the bat. All right, I'll start with something. Daredevil, 3 seasons that were on Netflix before Marvel kind of pulled the plug on that, or Disney
Right.
rather pulled the plug on that because Disney owns Marvel. Um, if you're a fan of the Daredevil comics, or even if you're not, what this is, it's a much more grounded superhero vigilante, essentially kind of like picture kind of Batman only without the ridiculous amount of money that Bruce Wayne has, and fighting street level crime in the neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen, New York. Um, we have Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, who's was blinded as a young boy by a radioactive isotope, and he's trained um, by a kind of a like a ninja like mentor named Stick, who was also blind, and basically who trains Matt how to become a fighter. Um, and but Matt also has this because of the radioactive isotope. He has this superpower that he essentially is able to broadcast like a radar. Has like a radar sense so that he can see, quote unquote, without actually being able to see. And so consequently, he grows up, he becomes an attorney. And so he's basically attorney by day, crime fighter by night. And this is another great ensemble cast. You had Deborah Ann Wall as Karen Page. Eldon Henson is Foggy Nelson. You may remember Deborah Ann Wall from the HBO series True Blood. And a lot of other great villains along the way that are brought in from the comics. Primarily Vincent D'Onofrio, who you may remember from the Men in Black movie. He plays the Kingpin of Wilson Fisk, who is probably, like arguably one of the best comic book TV villains ever depicted on screen. So charismatic, and this is another great gripping drama. It takes the material very seriously. Um, and you had John Bernthal, who was also on The Walking Dead, playing the Punisher, Frank Castle, and Elodie Young as Elektra, the kind of bad girl from Matt's past who comes back later on, and has also trained under Stick and has very ninja-like fighting skills. And it's just it's a fantastic drama, a lot of heart, and a lot of of um, drama in the fact that you have Matt as this kind of um, low-paid attorney who's just kind of has his own little business with Foggy Nelson, fighting against the rich and powerful kingpin who um, has his web all over throughout a web of corruption throughout the entire city, and involving the cops, the mayor, and all that. So it's essentially the little guy fighting against um, the corrupt oppressor and the crime lord, and it makes for gripping drama in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would think most of our audience has watched this, but
Yes,
if you haven't,
yes,
you should go. And so I agree with you. Daredevil is a great.
yeah. It's basically like if it's the superhero show that's also a crime drama.
Yeah,
So if you enjoy crime dramas, this show is right up your alley, in my opinion.
yeah. And so I'll share another one
Okay, go ahead.
that lasted, and this is if you are not, let's say your spouse is not a fan of superhero TV.
Yes.
Get Jessica Jones. Have her watch Jessica Jones.
That was in my short run, by the way.
Well, three episodes, three
Yeah,
seasons.
but I only recommend one of them.
Oh no, okay. Well, I recommend all three of them.
Okay,
I think
go ahead.
the Kristen Ritter is so good playing this messed up character. She is, and if you are a fan of detective shows and people, I'm going to talk about another one coming up when we talk about short runs.
Yes.
But I just love the way they played this. David Tennant is brilliant as a villain.
Yeah,
Carrie Ann Moss
he plays
playing,
essentially Purple
yeah,
Man, the Purple
yeah,
Man from the comics, who's this villain that can mind control
yeah,
people, and you see how scary, dangerous mind control is as a power.
yes,
Um, but here he's playing, the character's called Kilgrave,
yeah,
and just he's phenomenal in it. So if you're a Doctor Who fan, you should definitely watch
yeah.
Jessica Jones season 1.
Carrie Ann Moss plays the attorney Jerry Hogarth,
Yes,
and I want
from the Matrix. Yeah.
yeah, I want a L.A. Law and Order, whatever legal drama you want to use,
Yes.
with her running a set in the Marvel universe, playing a law firm,
Right.
because she is amazingly good yet evil at the same time. She is just wonderful.
Yeah, she's
So,
a bit unscrupulous, shall we
yes,
say?
she is absolutely.
Yeah.
Any others that you want to give a highlight to that have been in that middle range?
In the middle
Charles?
range, yeah. Let's see. Obviously, I want to recommend Legion, which was a show that was ran for 3 seasons on FX, and it's like if you're an X-Men fan, you probably are familiar with Legion, aka David Haller, who is the biological son of Professor X, Professor Charles Xavier. And here he's played by Dan Stevens, who some of you may know from Downton Abbey, but but David is essentially, he's a very powerful mutant because he's obviously the son of Professor X, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young boy. He ends up, when the series begins, he's a psychiatric patient in this institution who learns over the course of the series that he's the son of Professor X, and eventually discovers that his mind is affected by another mutant, a parasitic mutant called the Shadow King, whose real name is Amal Farouk, who's a villain, X-Men villain from the comics, that was the first evil mutant that Professor X encountered in the comics. And so there's kind of a history there as we discover throughout the course of the series that this was essentially the Shadow King's revenge, and because of his encounter with Professor X, who we do get to see in the third season, by the way. And again, another great ensemble. This is Rachel Keller as Sid Barrett, who's uh, David's fellow patient and another patient in the institution who he falls in love with. But her mutant power is that if she touches someone, she switches bodies with them uncontrollably. So she's essentially learned to become very distant. She wears long gloves, and it's almost kind of like a rogue type power where she's very hesitant to touch anyone. So it's a very sympathy, like you immediately feel for this couple. You immediately start shipping them. Aubrey Plaza, who a lot of people may know from The Office and other things, but she's a phenomenal actress. She plays a dual role. She plays Lenny Busker, who is a rather minor character who is essentially David's kind of fellow um, drug junkie that he hung out with, who ends up getting killed. But then the Shadow King essentially presents himself as Lenny in David's mind. And so essentially, so Aubrey Plaza gets to play the Shadow King at one point, and she is phenomenal in this role. She's so scary, so frightening, and it's really compelling television. You had Jean Smart, who's an actress that we talked about recently when we talked about Watchmen. She's been on Designing Women. She's great here as Melanie Bird, and we also had the Shadow King being played later in later seasons 2 and 3 by Naveed Negahban. So we get the actual Amal Farouk. We get to see him, and he's an extremely compelling villain as well. So it's kind of an offbeat, very psychedelic, very quirky show. It's one of those that I recommend because it's one of those that kind of, if you enjoy shows that kind of blow your mind, this is definitely that type of show. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you like something that kind of challenges you, has phenomenal music, and just really innovative storytelling, I highly recommend Legion. And that ran for 3 seasons, and it's on Hulu.
So I recommend. I think this is a really good show that will benefit from being binged.
Yes.
Because I know that when I tried to pick up the second season,
Yeah.
I was lost. And I think this is something that it will work really well at binging it, because it is very, and when I say complex, it's just there's a lot of moving parts,
right,
and a lot of different things. And I think this would be a really good show that you will come back and go, wow, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any other shows of mid-season range?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and just recommend one more then.
Sure.
I recommend this is another show that's also on Hulu, Preacher, which was recently on AMC, and that ran for 4 seasons. And this was another series based on a DC Vertigo comic. This one was by Garth Ennis and I'm blanking on the artist's name, Steve Dillon. And the premise of this series is that you have this preacher named Jesse Custer, and this takes place in the South. So it's very Southern influenced. And he was enduring this crisis of faith, but and while he's enduring this, he becomes infused with an extraordinary power of this kind of supernatural entity called Genesis. And as a result, he gets this gift where he can kind of control people using his voice. And he embarks on a quest to better understand this gift and also to literally find God. So essentially, it's a literal quest for God. And Um, he goes alongside his trigger-happy ex-girlfriend Tulip O'Hare, who's played by Ruth Negga, who's a phenomenal actress. She's also appeared on Agents of Shield, and uh, and also their newfound vampire friend, Proinsias Cassidy, played by Joseph Gilgun, who's uh, hilarious in this show, but also very tragic because being an immortal, you kind of feel for what he's gone through over the course of the series. But he's essentially like that kind of um, he's not a vampire that lived up to his potential, shall we say. He kind of scrambles to get by and does some very shady, underhanded things at times. It's a very odd trio of lead characters, but um, it's just a very, if as long as you're not like someone that um, may be easily offended, I definitely recommend this show. It can be occasionally blasphemous, so I'll just point that out there. Um, full disclosure, but again, a great ensemble. You had some very odd, quirky characters that are just completely entertaining. Pip Torrens as Harris Starr, the kind of villain of the story, who is kind of like not really a Nazi per se, but he does kind of like act like a Nazi, but he he is a bit of a joke, and he's a very funny, entertaining villain. So it's very quirky. Again, another quirky show, but very humorous at times, and definitely, and it's beautifully shot. This show. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, I definitely recommend Preacher. And that's on
Yeah,
Hulu.
yeah, it is. It is totally outside of my comfort zone.
Hmm.
I tried to watch it. It is not. Now, Ken, friend
Yes.
of the podcast,
Right.
loved it,
Right.
but it is just not my cup of tea. But it is something. It is really well done.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think your assessment and your kind of
Description.
warnings,
Yes. Yes.
kind of
I'm gonna,
is
I want to
on
be. I'm
mine.
gonna give some fair warnings because yeah, if you're
Yeah,
someone that's easily offended, this would not be your show.
yeah, absolutely.
It does get a bit raunchy at times, but not all the time.
No, no,
So
no. That's good.
and yeah, this is a show that a friend of the show and former co-host on the Phantom Zone podcast, Karen Lindsay, and I used to enjoy talking about here on the Phantom Zone. So if you kind of want to go back and we've talked about a lot of these shows on the Phantom Zone podcast. If you want to go back and listen to some of our past Phantom Zone episodes where we've done episode reviews, including Preacher, I highly recommend it.
Good.
All
All
right,
right.
let's do a short runs now.
Yes.
All right, so do you have any short runs, like 1 or 2 seasons?
So I actually have four.
Okay,
Most of
I'm
mine,
guessing Agent Carter is one of them.
yes. When one of when I originally was coming up with this thought, I was trying to think of things that people may have missed.
Yes.
That and hidden gems. So yes, Agent Carter did not get as many eyes watching it as we would have hoped. It is now currently on Disney Plus.
Right.
It was on ABC. A period piece with everyone's favorite spy, Peggy Carter, Haley Atwell playing her. By the way,
So if you saw Captain America: The First Avenger, you're familiar
yeah,
with Peggy Carter.
yes. By the way, another reason, not only because you love Bruce Springsteen music, to watch
I
her
find I find it amusing that
on
we
that
that we
film.
glitched up at Bruce Springsteen. It's almost like the podcast is rebelling
Yes,
against
it
us.
is. Yes, like, oh, I'm tired of that. She is really good in that movie, playing the supportive teacher.
Okay.
Um, Agent Carter is just a wonderful period piece. It shows the sexism that someone would have to
Because
of that.
yeah, it's kind of set after World War II. So
Yes.
you have Peggy, who's essentially like trying to get by in the world, make her way
Yeah.
in the workplace. You see her struggle against the sexism of the late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, she's smarter than everyone in the office. She's a better investigator, a better everything all the way
Yes,
around.
right.
But because she isn't a man, she is
They don't
really
take her
they
as
don't take her
seriously.
serious. Yeah,
Exactly.
really fun series. It it is on my list of things that when people say, "Oh, what were short run series that you wish could have extended longer?" After everyone says Firefly, Agent Carter is on my list. That
Yeah.
is a show that I really would have loved. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, just it's a great show. A lot of fun characters, a lot of great Marvel nods. We had Dominic Cooper, who played Jesse Custer on Preacher, playing Howard Stark, and then we had guest appearances by like Neil McDonough as Dum Dum Dugan, Toby Jones, who was also in Doctor Who episode, played Arnim Zola, one of Captain America's arch enemies. And we had other actors like Ray Wise guest appearing. He was on Twin Peaks, so just a really phenomenal show. And I wish it would have got at least a third season.
I agree. I really do think it would have
A
been
lot of people
nice.
would love to see more of um, Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter. She's so good.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
all right. I'm going to recommend. This is a show that we've talked about here a little bit on the Fandom Zone, but also on our late lamented Dangerous Habits, the Constantine podcast. The Constantine TV show that was on NBC ran for just one season on NBC. Currently can be found on DC Universe, starring Matt Ryan as John Constantine, um, Angelica Saleya as Zed Martin, Charles Halford is his as Constantine's little kind of best friend Chaz Chandler, and we also had other actors like Harold Perrineau from Lost as Manny and an Angel. Other guest cast with the great Jeremy Davies as Richie Simpson, who's been on Lost and a lot of other great shows. Emmett J. Scanlon played Jim Corrigan, the future Spectre, who had the show lasted longer, we probably would have gotten to see the Spectre, him as the Spectre. But yeah, this was a very underrated show. Um, it was buried on a Friday night time slot by NBC, who obviously did not have much faith in it. But um, for an NBC show, this really captured the spirit of the character. Matt Ryan became an instant fan favorite as John Constantine, so much so that fans kept begging after the show was canceled, and everybody went through their Save Constantine hashtag campaign, that he was brought back as John Constantine on Arrow, and ultimately it became a regular on Legends of Tomorrow. So if you want to kind of see where he came from, and this is a very, very heavy supernatural drama. Um, John is essentially that. If you're not familiar with the character, he's essentially a a British kind of not really a con man, but essentially he's someone who's had a lifelong experience with the supernatural. He's an expert in the occult, and ultimately, he's obviously drawn to these mysteries. He's basically a supernatural detective. And so, if you like, kind of like in the Jim Butcher novels, the Harry Dresden novels.
That's
Um,
exactly who I was going to bring up. Yes.
so yeah. So if you enjoy that kind of thing, um, but essentially as Harry Dresden as a very cocky, rebellious um, British uh, person, um, very charming, very enigmatic. And if you enjoy that sort of thing, I would definitely recommend Constantine.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And
Based,
and
of
it
course, on DC Comics Hellblazer.
what's kind of nice though is we by fans, and also I think Stephen Amell and a lot of other people on the creative end getting him part of the Arrowverse
Yes.
was a really nice. Lucifer didn't make my list, but it could have very well easily have done. It
Yeah,
might have made yours.
that was on the my few season runs
Yeah,
for 4 seasons. So
yeah. So here's one way back in 2002, Birds of Prey came out, and this was a CW show before the Arrowverse happened. I was lucky enough to meet Ashley Scott, Dina Myers, and Rachel Scarsden all at DragonCon a few years ago. And all of them said, absolutely, we were just a few years too early. This is not a perfect first season. It has all the warts of, it's Black Canary, Oracle, and the Huntress set in a Gotham where Batman has left. And they are in its, it has its flaws, but I think it's worth watching the season for seeing the three leads performances and seeing the potential what could have happened. It's just a super powerful female lead story that I really wish we could have gotten more in more episodes.
Yeah, because this was essentially because of the popularity of Smallville. The WB, the network at the time, attempted to kind of recapture, do a little bit something with that, only this time with the Batman side of the DC universe. And this was an attempt that just simply failed.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's
All
my
right.
take on it.
Yes.
All right. So something that's come out recently I want to recommend. That if you're a Netflix viewer, I recommend The Umbrella Academy, which is a show that's only run for one season so far. There is going to be a second season. And what this is it's we've talked about the Doom Patrol, and that's another show I want to recommend, but we've talked about that on Titan Talk. And if you enjoy the Doom Patrol, I think you would absolutely enjoy the Umbrella Academy. It's a very quirky, this seems to be kind of a common theme with me, superhero team. And the premise with this one is on October 1st, 1989, there were 43 women around the world gave birth simultaneously, despite none of them showing any sign of pregnancy until labor began. And 7 of those children are adopted by an eccentric billionaire named Sir Reginald Hargreaves, who raises each of the babies he was able to acquire, and and grows them up as a kind of superhero team, the Umbrella Academy. And so they have that history as children working for Sir Reginald Hargreaves, but after his mysterious disappearance, we don't really know the circumstances of which yet. They've kind of gone their separate ways, but then as the series begins, they're brought back as as adults. Apart from the mysterious number 5, who's played by a young man named Aidan Gallagher, who's a time traveler and doesn't age physically. So he's still trapped in the form of a young boy. And again, it's this family of misfits. And you've got other actors like Ellen Page, who's kind of like the star, the star name of this show, plays Vanya Hargreaves, this kind of member of the family, number 7, who was kind of ignored by Sir Reginald Hargreaves, who eventually, because she didn't show as much potential as a hero, her powers weren't as overt and helpful as some of the others. So she's kind of ignored. And then ultimately you find out that, well, hey, the reason she was ignored by Sir Reginald was that she's the most powerful member of the team. And so it's a very interesting family drama at the same time, but also being a superhero show in a bit, but only they're not in costume. So it's not like a traditional CW Arrowverse show. It's as much more, like I said, in the vein of Doom Patrol, and I highly recommend it.
It is on my list to binge.
Yeah, I think
because you had talked about it,
yeah,
how much you've enjoyed it.
I think this is a show that if you watch it, I think this would be something you would want to discuss.
Yeah,
here
so
on the Fandom Zone.
Yeah, we may have to do that. Good. So I have 2
Okay.
to discuss. One, I'm going to do first. This is an older series. I've talked about this before many times. The Middleman. It is a series from 2008. It was on the it was on like the Family Network or something. It
Yeah.
was not a mainstream. It's based on the comic book by Javier Grillo Marxers.
Okay.
Yeah, who's a lost writer. Um, you know how it is in comic books, how there's always a lot of mad scientists, androids, and robots all trying to either destroy the world and take it over? Well, it really does happen like that. And the middleman is the one who stands between that. Matt Kessler, who's not done a lot of other stuff, played the middleman. Natalie Morales, who has had this great career. Claire on The Grinder, Green Fury on Powerless.
Yeah.
She's the voice of Lois Lane in the current Harley Quinn series.
Which I
Plays,
also highly recommend, by the way.
yeah. I adore this series. This is, how there is plenty of series that Charles like, oh, I want to talk to Jesse about this. I want to talk about this.
Right.
This is the top of my list that I want Charles to watch sometime so we can talk about. I adore this series.
And I know, you've obviously wanted me to talk about this. You even sent me the DVDs.
Yes,
So
I did.
It's like, well, you watched this already, so
Yeah.
it's one of those. I still have the DVDs, and it's on my pile that I
So
need to watch.
what we should do is we should do the Umbrella Academy and this. We'll each do that. Let's get that on the schedule. All right. Do you got another one, or do you want me to give my last?
I'll go ahead and give another one. Something right now that you should take advantage of. I definitely recommend checking out Pennyworth, which is a show. It's only had one season so far. It's on Epix, but right now Epix is doing a special you should be, if you're a Spectrum cable viewer, you should be able to watch Epix. And what this is, it's from the creators of Gotham, but it's a much more serious drama than Gotham was. Gotham, we've talked about that here on the Phantom Zone podcast. It's been a bit of a campy show at times, but this one, it's a much more adult drama in the sense of, I should say, a much more sophisticated drama. And what the premise of this one is, it explores the early life of Alfred Pennyworth from Gotham. Only he was a former British SAS officer who forms his own security company in an alternate London, which kind of combines aspects of London in the 1950s and 60s. So it's kind of a period piece. And the production values are superb on this show. One of the things that even with Gotham being so campy, you couldn't really fault the production values on that show. It looked great visually, and here they really capture the spirit of the time and the setting. They fully embrace it, and Alfred, through the course of the first season, becomes a target of this Raven Society, that kind of secret society group that's conspiring to take over the British government. And Jack Bannon, who plays Alfred, is superb in the role. Now, we talked about how great Sean Pertwee was as Alfred on Gotham, but Jack Bannon is phenomenal as a young Alfred. He's very confident, very assured, knows exactly what he's doing. You get his earliest encounters with Ben Aldridge, who plays Thomas Wayne, Emma Petz, who plays Martha Kane. So this is before Thomas and Martha even get married. And so this essentially is the foundation of his friendship and relationship with the Waynes before before working for them. We have Paloma Faith, who's kind of a British pop star at the moment. She does a great cover of INXS's Never Tear Us Apart that I highly recommend. She plays a kind of a little bit of a psychopathic villain named Bet Sykes, who's kind of like a working class type, but also surprisingly effective villain at times. Jason Fleming, who played Mr. Hyde in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's Lord James Harwood in this, and a lot of other great actors. Just a superb setting, a superb period drama that I highly recommend. And especially if you're a Batman fan, you were thinking, well, why do I want to watch a show about Alfred? Well, this is a great show.
Yeah,
And it's almost kind of like a 60s spy series.
I was gonna exactly say it has flavors of the Kingsman,
Yes.
James Bond, the Jack Reacher. If you've ever
Yes.
read those novels, it is a very complete world that has just enough of the dashiness and craziness of Gotham, but
Not too
uh,
much. Not too much.
not too much. I think it's
It
just
doesn't go overboard like Gotham did.
right. It's just a little bit of seasoning enough.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is a
It's
wonderful
a better
series.
balance.
It is. It is. They really did well.
Yeah. So if you're one of those people that may have been turned off a little bit by Gotham being a little too silly,
Yes.
and were worried that Pennyworth might be in that same thing, just it's okay. I had
Yeah, no,
yeah, this is better than Gotham.
this is more in tone, and they are nothing alike. But Agent Carter, it is
Yes.
a period piece that's taking this serious, and it's undone.
Yeah.
All right, so my current one, and it's not too late. One of the things that we're talking about is we're binging series that we wish had gotten more time.
Right.
Stumptown is a series based on the comic book by Greg Rucka.
Yeah.
And Greg Rucka is an amazing writer. And the premise of this is there is a very smart aleck Marine veteran who becomes a private investigator kind of by accident in Portland, Oregon. Her brother has Down syndrome. She is a functioning alcoholic at best. She is a chronic gambler. She is the Rockford Files meet the Dresden Files. I mean, that
Yes.
is this. She is totally. Her world is totally messed up, and Dex is the character. Colby Smothers from The Avengers, How I Met Your Mother, plays the lead. Is just brilliant in this role. And I really recommend, if you are a fan of any of the Rockford Files, the Dresden Files, any of these kind of flawed
Detective
detectives,
shows. Yeah.
it is just perfect.
Yeah. Well, that sounds good. And yeah, just can't go wrong with a comic book created by Greg Rucka. So,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah.
And Colby Smothers is just wonderful in this, and plays her to the flaw just wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, you got another one, Charles?
Well, I just just looking at the time, we should probably kind of wrap this
Okay.
up a little bit
Yes, I
because I got
think
to
so.
get going. But
Okay.
so I'm just gonna give some very quick recommendations of shows. What I've got left on my list. Kind of going back to the few season runs of 3 or 4 seasons, I would recommend the first 3 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's currently on Netflix right now, if you're familiar at all with that. Um, The Flash. Obviously, I'm going to recommend The Flash because, hey, it's me. So I'm going to recommend the first 3 seasons of the 2014 version, the current one that's on the CW, starring Grant Gustin as Barry Allen and Candace Patton as Iris West Allen. I would recommend that. And then back to short runs, I'm going to recommend the first season of Black Lightning, which is currently on Netflix, starring Cress Williams as Jefferson Pierce, China Ann McClain as his daughter Jennifer Pierce, and Nefessa Williams as his other daughter, Anissa Pierce. Kind of very family, like a family of superheroes. So if you enjoy that sort of thing, definitely at least recommend the first season of that. The Boys season 1, which we've talked about here on the Phantom Zone, you and I, a little bit. We didn't go through each by episode, but we did kind of do a season review. And that's
Absolutely.
currently on Amazon Prime, starring Carl Urban as Billy Butcher, Jack Quaid as Huey Campbell, Anthony Starr as the Homelander, Aaron Moriarty as Starlight. Definitely recommended. Doom Patrol season 1. We've talked about that on Titan Talk, and that's on DC Universe, obviously. starring Brendan Fraser as Robot Man, Matt Bomer as Negative Man, April Bowlby as the Last Woman, Diane Guerrero was phenomenal as Crazy Jane, Timothy Dalton as the Chief, and Alan Tudyk as Mr. Nobody. I just rewatched the pilot of that last night, and just an amazing show. I cannot wait for season two. I'm dying for season two already. Also, I'm going to recommend The Flash, the 1990 version. That's currently you can find on DC Universe, starring, of course, John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen, Amanda Pays as Tina McGee, and Mark Hamill as the Trickster. Worth it alone just to watch Mark Hamill as the Trickster, in my opinion. Um, Great show. Again, this is another show kind of like Smallville that was kind of the inspiration for the modern CW shows. Krypton seasons 1 and 2, which we talked about here on the Phantom Zone. That's currently on DC Universe. Luke Cage season 1, that's on Netflix, starring Mike Coulter as Luke Cage. Marshala Ali, great actor, as Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes. Simone Messick as Misty Knight, and Alfre Woodard as Mariah Dillard, and Rosario Dawson as Claire Temple. And then lastly, of course, I have to recommend Watchmen because that is a phenomenal single season show. Maybe, only one season that we've talked about here on the Phantom Zone. Of course, starring the great Regina King as Sister Knight, Yahya Abdul Mateen as Cal Abar, her husband, who becomes someone very, very important that I'm not going to spoil for you. Gene Smart as Laurie Blake, and Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias. How about
Yeah.
you? Any others you want to recommend, Jesse?
No, I think you mentioned several great ones. The I especially if you've resisted watching Watchmen, I think you'll be very surprised how well that is done. I
It's
agree with
superb,
you. Yeah. There's
and that's currently on HBO on demand, by the way.
yeah, I'm going to echo all those.
Yep. So some great. So there's one or two ideas from us to
Yes.
help tide you through, get you through. Hopefully, I know. Hopefully, we keep hoping that things are going to return back to normal, but I think it's going to be a slow, gradual process. So as we still stay in our seclusion. Hopefully, this will give you some ideas.
Absolutely.
All right.
And hey,
Yes.
Charles, if they decide to take our advice and
Yes.
want to send us some feedback on what they saw and wants to tell us either yay, we were wonderful and great examples and great advice, or boo, I
Yeah.
can't believe we recommended this show, how could they?
Well, hopefully you enjoy our recommendations, but on the off chance that you don't, either way, please write to us. Let us know because obviously we're going to be back eventually with a show to talk about, and would love to get your feedback. We do get your email, so drop us a line at phantomzonecast@gmail.com. That's phantomzonecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know if you've got any recommendations you would recommend comic book TV shows for people to watch. Also, you can reach us on at Phantom Zone Cast on Twitter, on Facebook, the Phantom Zone Podcast, or on Instagram at Phantom Zone Podcast. And Jesse, how about you? How can they reach you?
So during this time, Charles and I are continuing to talk Doctor Who every week. We are currently in the middle of Torchwood Month. So please check us out on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, available under the Southgate Media banner. We are talking, if you decide to binge Doom Patrol, or Titans for that matter.
Right.
We didn't mention it, but if you decide to, DC Universe,
Right.
we have done episodes discussing each of those. Please check those. If you decide to do Watchmen, go back and listen to this podcast where we discovered those episode by episode. You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me talk about music during this time with a lot of different Springsteen and other musician fans on Set Listing Bruce. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, all the normal places. Charles, how about you?
Well, of course, me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. and my blog of geeky things. Come on, you.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Well, where I talk about all the kind of comic book TV shows we talk about here on the Phantom Zone podcast, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news, and news of my other podcasts that I do for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast I do with Jesse, Titan Talk, the Titans podcast that I also do with Jesse, and Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of Twin Peaks in a very special episode, episode 72, called 30 Years Later, which I hope everyone checks out because we had a lot of fun talking about that. So otherwise, not sure when we're going to be back for episode 177, but I'm sure it won't be very long.
That's
And
right.
got a lot of great TV to watch. Hope you enjoy our recommendations. And Jesse, any final thoughts?
No, I just want everyone, thank you for keep subscribed to us in our feed. Keeping a watch for us as we think of things we want to talk about. Please, we will certainly will hope you are listening.
Yeah.
Charles, I hope you and the rest of our listeners are all staying safe.
Yes.
And taking care of your family and doing, social distancing, washing your hand, wearing your mask when you need to, and mostly staying in good spirits. We are in this together, and we are going to get through it.
Well said. Well said. And now, as Jesse said, everyone stay safe, stay smart, and we'll see you next time right here on the Phantom Zone podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.